So thank you everyone for joining me. My name is Chris Rogers. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at HYCU. I primarily look after all of our hybrid cloud products, so Nutanix, Dell relationships, VMware, all the hypervisors, all kind of the on-prem and IaaS capabilities in the HYCU portfolio. So thank you for joining us today. So we're talking about move to Nutanix, close the close the data protection gap. This is kind of an interesting one. I've been speaking to many customers, partners, prospects over the last few years about this whole moving to Nutanix and the kind of the exodus from other platforms onto Nutanix and kind of how that's looking, how people have been structuring it, and um how certain things take different priorities in that, right? So it's an interesting thing to get thoughts on for everybody on the call as well. But if you have made that move, there's probably potentially a position that you haven't taken, which is evaluating your data protection solution. Um, what I see most of the time, customers is pretty much this, like, right, they evaluated everything except the part that protects it once it lands, right? So what usually happens during migrations, right? We kind of know that they're deadline driven, they're kind of to the deadline projects. There's a hard end date when people need to be either off hardware or off of licensing packages or out of a particular data center or something like that, right? They're really pressurized environments to get things moving, get things moved, make sure that they're working properly, minimizing downtime. All of those high pressure situations to come into the fact. Um, and then data protection tends to get deprioritized because many other things kind of take the priority, right? So maybe there's applications that aren't 100% natively working in the new platform, or the networking stack has to change, or something else has taken priority in this kind of move, in this kind of change. Maybe it's a skilling issue. Maybe myself before I joined Haiku was a VMware guy, right? I only knew VMware really well, and so I had to learn Nutanix. It's incredibly easy to learn, but maybe that's something that's being prioritized. But because the existing backup tool says it's supported, right, and they can do Nutanix backup, it kind of just gets put on the okay, cool, that works pile, and then it never really gets evaluated properly. It never really gets the thought. And then we also come across well, I don't want to change too many things at once, right? So we're already moving hypervisors. So I don't want to change backup tools as well because it's supported and it works. Um, but then the biggest statement I see on this is, by not evaluating backup at the time of migration, most teams are unknowingly accepting a risk they never signed off on, right? So just because it's supported doesn't mean it's working to the best of its ability, and it's going to work in the same way as it did when it was running on your old platform, such as a VMware platform. Especially those tools that were designed and developed for VMware platforms and have been adapted and tweaked and changed to support Nutanix. And that's really where we start rolling into this conversation is the differences between the platforms, right? When you move into a Nutanix ecosystem, you don't just move into a hypervisor. You don't just move into Acropolis hypervisor and run virtual machines. They Organizations that adopt Nutanix typically go from virtual machines and then move into their whole stack, right? So into Nutanix Files, Nutanix objects, database services, into the public cloud, into Kubernetes, into all the other places that they have data and can run services. And that's the whole beauty of running a Nutanix ecosystem, right? It's all under one roof. It all feels familiar. It's all in the same ecosystem. Um, but what happens then is you end up with a backup tool that says it supports Nutanix, but what it actually means is it supports virtual machines on Nutanix. And when you start to dig deeper and scratch away at the surface to say, okay, do you support NDB properly, or is it just an agent based, or is it just a generic database backup? Oh yeah, we don't support that properly. Do we support NZ2 on AWS properly and Azure and on GCP and Nutanix objects and volume groups and all the other places that you might have data and have data stored and be running critical systems in? Is all of that actually supported and working as you need it to be? And then it might be today you're only running virtual machines, but will it cover what you're going to adopt next year? Will it cover where Nutanix goes next into wherever they're going to, and you're going to start adopting maybe their AI services or wherever else it might be? And is it going to hold you back from making those decisions by saying, well, we'd love to move into using, pick one of the Nutanix services, but actually we can't protect it properly at the moment, so we can't put production data in there because we don't have a way of protecting it properly. And that gap isn't obvious when you first move, right? It's not something that's a glaring thing that flies up on risk registers and people raise it as a massive issue. It's kind of like that quiet underlying issue or problem that kind of no one really knows about until you know about it, right? It's kind of there in front of you when you say, I want to start adopting these technologies. I want to start using the best of the Nutanix. I want to start adopting the platform as a whole rather than just running it as I was running my VMware system. So the first point is, coverage you can't see. A lot of tools are going to protect the basics, but not anything further into that stack, right? Maybe they'll go into the file shares, but maybe as a generic file share, right? Rather than an actual looking at the Nutanix APIs and looking at how they can best support the way that Nutanix wants you to capture the data rather than a generic file share. Or they're going to implement workarounds or patches or these little tweaks or these little kind of patchwork solutions to say, yeah, we can do that, but we have to do it in this way, and we have to run this agent or this particular thing to get around the limitation of how we do it. And then one of those becomes okay, two of them become a nightmare, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 become completely unmanageable, completely, a burden to the IT teams. And then when you get into recovery, a lot of them say, well, yeah, we can recover. Of course we can recover. But then you start looking at it, they're requiring agents for just basic functionality like file level recovery. Recovery testing is clunky and not real world scenarios, right? They're booting up on boxes that they own and running that compute, but that's not going to be running where Nutanix is running, right? It's not going to be using the technology and the snapshotting capabilities that Nutanix uses to validate workloads. And they're not built using the strengths of the underlying platform. They were built for alternative platforms and adapted to Nutanix. So rather than using things like the super amazing snapshotting technique they have, rather than utilizing the replication they already have in their data plane, they're going to start building on top of what they already have rather than looking at it from a holistic point of view. And then it starts getting into, okay, we're managing agents again, we're managing proxies, we're managing scripts or workarounds. We end up with this backup fatigue where we constantly have to babysit something to make sure it's working, because it's not just set and forget, because we have all these kind of little bits and pieces that aren't quite working as efficiently as they need to be. And the end goal is like you move to Nutanix to simplify. You simplified your IT with Nutanix across the board, and your backups are kind of taking that time back away from you again. You become 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% more efficient because you're running Nutanix. And now we're edging that time back out. So rather than progressing the business forward, we're kind of just stripping that back into BAU again, but just from hypervisor management into backup management, right? So rather than being super efficient and started looking at new workloads and AI and Kubernetes and containerization and all these things that we have to start looking at, have to start adopting pretty quickly, where our time is spent focused on the things that don't actually matter, making sure that's run, making sure the backups are running correctly, making sure that we can meet our SLAs, because we just don't have the confidence in the tool that we used to. And this is where HYCU really kind of shines in this scenario. So HYCU was built for Nutanix from day one. That's all we did when we first started out with HYCU. We built a purpose-built backup solution for the Nutanix ecosystem. And what that means is that we grew up learning Nutanix, right? We grew up learning how to integrate into their API stack, into their data plane, into their control plane, into their automation stack. That means when we're starting to look at the broader ecosystem, our breadth of coverage and our integration goes far beyond anyone else in the marketplace, because we actually help write some of the APIs that we utilize ourselves, right? So the change file tracking API in Nutanix Files was co-written by HYCU and Nutanix. So actually, you can see the level of engineering and the level of co-development between the two organizations. I mean, if you at the end of this, you take a trial or go through our product tours, you'll see how closely HYCU's UI matches Prism and Prism Central as well. So we even based our UI to look and feel like a Nutanix product rather than coming out of Nutanix and feeling like a completely alien solution. We wanted the workflows to feel similar. We wanted the UI to feel similar for people, so they didn't feel like they were using a third-party product. They were using a first-party from Nutanix as well. And we deploy as a Nutanix native hardened virtual appliance into your Nutanix stack. We build on top of the APIs that we're supposed to use, and we're always updating those and helping them refine those as well. So no agents to deploy, there's no proxies, no workarounds, right? It's just built the way that Nutanix wants it built, because we helped build a lot of it with them, right? And said, how would you design a backup for your system, and we help to design and go from there. We've had multiple design partnerships and blueprints and validated designs from HYCU along across the years as well. And we've got that kind of history of a continued development roadmap with them. So if you look at the last, I think it's coming up to a decade now, we've always been first and best in market for all the new Nutanix capabilities coming out. So when we launched Nutanix Files, we were there. Nutanix Objects, we were one of the founding partners for Nutanix Mine when it came around. NC2 on GCP. When the Dell and the Pure, or Everpure, as they're now known, announcements came out last year at Nutanix Next, we were design partners and first in line to be validated by Pure and by Dell to have full support with those solutions as well. So when you start looking at an investment in your Nutanix platform, you haven't bought Nutanix just to rip and replace your old platform. You bought it to invest in that ecosystem. You bought into the Nutanix story, the Nutanix cloud platform as a whole. So when you start looking at what comes next, what comes in 2 years or 3 years' time, you don't want to be in a position where your solution isn't keeping pace with what Nutanix is bringing out, and you can't adopt at the same methodology or the same pace and innovate in the way that you want to because you can't place production data into systems that aren't protected properly. And this is really where HYCU really stands out. We have that history, we have that connection, and we kind of know what's coming next with Nutanix. We help design them, we help build, and we make sure we're there. Pretty much as soon as they launch, we have something to protect that solution if we need to as well. So that's kind of like the three that I wanted to cover: the breadth and coverage of the solution. No data left behind, right? We try and capture as much data as we can in the Nutanix platform and store that for you in wherever you want to store that. The native integration, no workarounds, no purpose-built hardware or anything else like that. Built for Nutanix with Nutanix in mind, and then future-proofing that investment, making sure we're going where Nutanix is going, so protecting the past, the present, and the future of where Nutanix is as well. And then you complete the migration. You started. Now let's try and close that gap, right? It doesn't mean starting over, right? It doesn't mean having to rip and replace everything from day one. Maybe you're going to get us in to replace for AHV to start with, or for NDB, or for something like that. Maybe it is a complete replacement. Maybe it's something that you've got licensing that's coming up for renewal, and you want to give us a go and see how we can change things. It doesn't have to be like an all or nothing for us. We have over 100 different integrations across Nutanix, hybrid cloud, public cloud, and SaaS workloads as well. So for us, it can be a land and expand on Nutanix. It could be Nutanix plus 365 plus Entra. It can be a whole plethora of different solutions that kind of comes in with this. But built with a tool that where you're going to, not where you've been, right? So don't just take the legacy with you, right? Make sure you're looking at it and saying, is this the best tool for my organization? Is this the best way that I can protect my data? And am I getting the best out of my Nutanix platform? The worst thing you want to do is set back your Nutanix platform or cause production issues on your Nutanix platform because your backups or your data protection solution isn't optimized in the right way, right? We want to make sure we're maximizing what we've bought into the Nutanix ecosystem and protecting it in the right way as well. We're getting that immediate full coverage. So when you do move across, even if you're not moved into the Nutanix ecosystem yet, right, we still support all the other major hypervisors in the marketplace. And a lot of customers will implement HYCU in their previous environments, get everything backed up and protect whilst they move across. And then immediately once they've moved across, we've already got a solution in place and they can start using the same policies and the same storage targets to protect those workloads as well. So, kind of covering you on the migration as well. And we're not doing the migration. We can do the migration, but Nutanix have great tools to do that as well. We're often kind of brought in by the Nutanix reps if there's an edge case or something that their tool can't quite do. But typically we're there for the protection of that migration as well. And then that one platform that grows with you from on-premises into NC2 across your entire hybrid cloud estate. But as I mentioned before, also having the biggest coverage in public cloud and SaaS workloads as well. Typically what we're seeing from customers is a radical simplification of their IT stack. They don't want to have 15, 20, 30 different systems protected by 5 or 6 different backup vendors. They want to have something that's going to cover them from where they are today and also where they're going in the future, whether that is Nutanix, but also into their SaaS ecosystem, into their public cloud ecosystem as well. We kind of understand that hybrid is the methodology for pretty much most organizations out there, whether that's a hybrid between on-prem, cloud and SaaS, or between just cloud and SaaS, or between on-prem and SaaS. Pretty much everyone's got that mix somewhere and that blend. So making sure you have a platform that can support everywhere you're moving data to and from, rather than just inside of its own ecosystem. So that's all I had for today. Hopefully we're going to try and keep these a bit more shorter and a bit sharper and a bit kind of more to the point, so we're not, wasting people's time or going over our allocation. Because I do like to talk. So I've set myself limits on the amount of slides we're going to do and make sure we're kind of to the point. And if you need us and you want to kind of learn more from this or understand a bit more about how we work or what we do, there's a few kind of call to actions on the screen here. So there's a self-guided product tour. So what does that mean? That's kind of a live HTML version of HYCU and Nutanix. It will run you through all the different workflows of how we do backups, how we do restores, the cyber resilience capabilities, the Nutanix Files capabilities, NT2, all those other things as well. So a self-paced, click through kind of demos. If you want to talk it over with someone, you can book a call with one of our specialists and experience a demo live in front of you. You can ask any questions you want to a specialist, get them to answer questions on how potentially a move would look like, or what the differences are, or how we can approach it. And then if you just kind of want to have a little read over what I've kind of been discussing a little bit today in a little bit more detail, there's also an ebook on the screen. So why Nutanix needs a different approach or a new approach to data protection. Um, that's all I had time for today. So if you do have any questions, put them in the chat now. I'll wait just a few more moments and see if there's anything that's come up. But as I said, if no one have any questions, I really appreciate your time today. As I said, I'm trying to keep these short and sharp so we could do a few more of them on a few different subjects rather than just one big one, once a quarter or once a month. We're trying to get a few more bits of information out there and get a grips to what you guys actually want to hear from us about rather than just one topic a month. So I don't see any questions coming through in the chat or in the Q&A. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much, everyone.